All right. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing as our speaker from Elizabeth Davis, a licensed clinical social worker who founded a nonprofit organization in 1990 to manage and improve Brightside Manor in response to a severe shortage of affordable and decent supportive housing for older adults. Since that time, she has upgraded, expanded, and brought Brightside Manor up to the standards for assisted living licensure. She has launched Bergen County's only assisted living program for low-income older adults aging within subsidized housing, built 62 units of independent senior housing, and has started construction on another 40 units. Coordinated Teaneck's age-friendly community initiative and started a financial literacy and money management program for older adults. Elizabeth?
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. I just love that music. It was so fantastic. Really nice song. So you already been introduced to me a bit. I'm here today with EJ Vizzi, who is manning my computer and my tech support. EJ is our Director of Senior Programs and also the coordinator of our Age-Friendly Teaneck project. She and I are both social workers, although I've been a social worker a lot longer. We've both really dedicated our careers to working with older adults. I've been working with older adults since actually before I graduated from graduate school in 1982. But I think my interest and sort of awareness or sensitivity to some of the challenges associated with aging goes back to when I was a high school student around 1973, and I was in school in downtown Brooklyn, and I volunteered with a local community service organization. And my assignment was to visit every week with Miss Coe, who was in her 90s, which of course to me at 16 seemed really ancient. But she lived alone in an apartment on the 5th floor of a walk-up building. So she was essentially trapped in that building. She could not manage the stairs. She had never married. She didn't have any children. Her only relative was a sister who lived upstate New York. And I was really the person that she saw from week to week, and I visited with her and did her grocery shopping, and I would run errands for her. But I think it really struck me as a young 16-year-old that is this what happens when you get old? You're all by yourself. And of course, back then there wasn't even the technology that's available nowadays to get help or to be connected if there is an emergency or you just need to talk to somebody. So she had her phone and really that was it. She also had about $20 a week to spend on groceries. So I'd do her shopping and, figure out what we could afford for $20. So while it sort of felt like a very bleak or sort of painted a grim picture for me of what happens when you get old. At the same time, Miss Coe was always very cheerful. She was optimistic and hopeful. And I remember one day she got a care package from her sister and it included some dandelion wine. And the two of us at 16, I enjoyed my first and only glass of dandelion wine. And we had such a nice time together. Visiting her was pleasant. So I realized that contrary to a lot of stereotypes, that being old doesn't mean being depressed or losing hope or losing the ability to look forward. One of the things that EJ runs is a internship program in the summer for high school students. And we try to expose them to all the pleasures and the opportunities in working with older adults. So we have them learn about all the different careers, from the obvious sort of medical careers, but also to careers in architecture and design or technology. And before and after the internship, we do a pre and post test to gauge their attitudes about older adults. And it's amazing that these kids think that older adults are always depressed. They have nothing to look forward to. And then that, really changes after they spend a month with us. Anyway, so in my 4 decades of working as a social worker in aging, I've seen many changes in how we serve the needs of older adults, and there's certainly more planning for what's to come in the next several decades as the population of older adults swells. There are far more resources available within communities, but many are cost prohibitive and target the most affluent of older adults. If you're looking for assisted living in this area, other than my facility, you can expect to pay somewhere between $8,000 and $12,000 per month. Across the globe, here in the United States and in New Jersey, we're approaching a day when the young will no longer dramatically outnumber the old. So cities, suburbs, rural towns alike will need to find better ways to respond to the needs and desires of people of all ages. And that is what really inspires the age-friendly movement. This movement was launched by the World Health Organization in 2005 with the mission of developing local strategies to respond to the global challenges and opportunities of our aging population. An axiom of the age-friendly movement is that what is good for older adults is good for everyone. In the US, AARP plays a major role in encouraging communities to become more age-friendly and supporting them as they commit to doing so. The age-friendly movement works to promote independence and equity among older adults. A chief mission is, of course, to combat ageism. In doing so, we hope to address the many political, social, and economic forces that can make it difficult or even impossible for older adults to age in their homes and communities rather than in an institutional setting. Our organization launched Age-Friendly Teaneck in 2016, and we work in tandem with a growing number of community leaders, service providers, civic and faith-based groups, older adults, and older adult advocates across New Jersey. Most of our goals, promoting transportation alternatives, strengthening social supports, reducing housing cost burdens, promoting accessibility, fostering intergenerational connections, and increasing the walkability of our communities are goals that would improve life for all residents throughout their lifespans. They line up with AARP's 8 domains of livability. And so we'll talk through these 8 domains. We start with outdoor spaces and buildings. So age-friendly communities need to provide public places in which people can gather indoors and out. Green spaces, seating and accessible buildings, buildings with elevators, staircases with railings, zero-step entrances can be used and enjoyed by people of all ages. Parks are really important, and our project, we toured all of Teaneck's 23 parklands. And as we looked at them, we looked at the age-friendly design principles that we learned about at a recent conference in which New York City Parks Commissioner Mitchell Silver outlined the 4 factors that parks redevelopment should be focusing on: access, comfort, activity, nature. And I think we also looked at safety. And so we learned a lot about the age friendliness of our parks. And we actually put together a great report, which I think is available on our website, on the Age-Friendly Teaneck website, where we really make some recommendations as to how parks can be enjoyed by everyone, not just young people or not any particular group, but are safe and accessible for all. Okay, the next one is transportation. This is really important. Driving shouldn't be the only way we get around. I think there's a statistic that older adults outlive their ability to desire to drive by an average of 7 to 10 years. So we need complete streets. We need streets to be safe for pedestrians, for bicyclists. We need transportation options, both large scale like trains, buses, and light rail, to small taxi, shuttles, and rideshare services. People need to be able to get not just to medical appointments, but to shopping and to social and cultural activities. We've done a lot of work with New Jersey Department of Transportation. We did a workability workshop with the township, in which we actually had some older adults sort of cross the street, and we looked at the safety and the time it takes to cross the street and all the factors that impact the safety of an intersection. And what we really want are intersections and crossings to be safe, not just for older adults, but for people of all abilities, people in wheelchairs, parents with strollers. So again, a community that is safe and age-friendly is really good for people of all ages and abilities. The next area is housing. And this is an area that my organization is very involved in, and it's something I feel very strongly about. According to an AARP study of lifestyle preferences, nearly 80% of Americans over age 80 say they want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. That same survey, however, found that 1 in 3 homeowners think their homes would need major modifications to accommodate them in later years. And they're probably right, because according to census data, nearly a third of New Jersey residents over 65 living outside of an institution has a disability of some type. So we need to get to a place where more homes are built and renovated to universal design standards that accommodate all needs, and where communities are more walkable and transportation options are plentiful. We need to address the growing affordability crisis faced by many older adults in New Jersey. Almost half of New Jersey's 65 and over households are paying more than 30% of their gross household income on housing costs. So that means that money that is needed for nutrition or for healthcare or medication is going to housing instead. 20% of New Jersey's homeless population is over 55, according to 2022 counts. And that's a percentage that's growing, which is really very sad and disturbing. Economic circumstances can dramatically change in retirement, even in affluent areas of New Jersey like Bergen County. 59% of single Bergen residents over 60 have annual incomes that are at or below the Elder Economic Security Index. This is a key measure of the cost of basic needs that has been calculated by the Center for Social and Demographic Research on Aging at UMass Boston. Waitlists for affordable senior housing in buildings can stretch as long as 10 years. We operate a building here in Teaneck. We have 900 names on the waiting list. It's imperative that our community, regional, and state leaders look for ways to spur the development of affordable housing. It's also important to point out that affordable housing challenges are not unique to older adults. Millennials and young people looking for starter homes are also squeezed by the region's inflated housing prices, leaving many in a precarious financial place their entire lives. This slide shows, talks about missing middle housing. And this is something I think that's very true in a lot of suburban communities that were designed in the 50s and 60s. We have, and Teaneck is actually behind, is one of the more difficult communities in having such a large percentage of single family homes, or the other extreme, large apartment buildings, but there's not a lot of what they call middle housing, which is, different types of smaller, duplexes and maybe buildings that combine business with residential, so that people might want to downsize to housing that maybe is close to business districts where you can walk to shops and stores. So just a more diverse housing stock is important for communities to consider. Someone who's involved with Age Friendly Teaneck is Jackie Cates, who is the mayor of Teaneck for many years. And when she and her husband wanted to downsize, they really couldn't find anything that was suitable. And so they now live in Fort Lee. We also need to consider other measures that address housing challenges, like home sharing, accessory dwelling units, home modifications, and tax freezes that help older adults stay in their homes and communities. So I think we can skip that next slide and go to social participation. Age-friendly communities need to offer a robust range of programs to enable older adults to contribute and enjoy the cultural life of the community. We know that loneliness is as debilitating a health condition as having a chronic illness or disease. So having opportunities to socialize and also a lot of intergenerational programming is all good. Respect and social inclusion. Everyone wants to feel valued. Older adults need to feel honored in their community, to have opportunities to be involved in advisory boards, planning boards, and again, feel respected and included. Work and civic engagement. Why does work need to be an all or nothing experience? Age-friendly communities encourage people to be actively involved, working, volunteering, flexible work environments. Our project and our organization, we really value and engage volunteers. We have a free money management program, a financial literacy program, and really the backbone of those programs are many of the retirees who volunteer for those programs. We also have many volunteers who come to our facilities and with as pet therapists or to play games with our residents. So volunteering can be extremely valuable to older adults and to the organizations they lend their experience and expertise to. Communications and information. It is surprisingly difficult to get information about community resources for many older adults. Bergen County has lots of entitlement and benefit programs for older adults or all people. A lot of those programs are under-enrolled because people just don't know about them or how to access them or what it takes to qualify. Early on with Age-Friendly Teaneck, we were told by the director of the Teaneck Volunteer Ambulance Corps that a lot of the calls that they get are not medical emergencies, they're social emergencies. And when they get to someone's house, a lot of these young EMTs really don't know about resources or how to even have a conversation with the older resident about resources in the community. So we put together this magnet, which is a leave behind. So when we give this to the ambulance corps and the police department and fire department and at the library, and so that people have a name and a number to call, and they know when they call the number, a person's going to answer. It's not going to be a menu that they have to navigate their way through. A lot of programs have moved to electronic platforms, which is great for lots of us, but for some older adults, that really is not an easy way to get information. We put together, and I have extra copies if anyone wants to see, we put together a newsletter, which we distributed hard copies of. It's also available electronically. And EJ has recorded a number of programs on, or trainings, videos on how to use technology, how to participate in a Zoom call, how to FaceTime, how to use your smartphone, because smartphones don't come with instructions. And so those videos run on Teaneck's cable access channel, but they're also available on YouTube, which I guess you could get through our website, right? Okay. And then finally, community and health services. We need to make sure that residents have access to healthcare services, to nutrition and exercise programs, to farmers markets, to vaccination and preventive screenings, and a way to get to their doctors if they need to, which ties back to transportation. So those are the 8 domains of livability, according to AARP. And AARP has a tremendous amount of information on their website if you're interested in learning more about livable communities and what different communities are doing all over the country. There's some really interesting examples. And I should say that, a community doesn't become age-friendly overnight. It can take decades. And it can be sort of overwhelming, but you start at one thing at a time. And it's important that it's not just one organization that makes a community age-friendly. It's really the collaboration of all of the segments of the community. So that's the big picture on the global age-friendly movement. Let me tell you a little bit about what's happening here in New Jersey. Our network formed in 2016 after 2 foundations, the Henry and Marilyn Taub Foundation and the Grata Fund for Senior Care, awarded grants to help launch new age-friendly community projects in northern New Jersey. Community leaders in 19 towns now regularly participate in and contribute to our alliance's information sharing and advocacy effort in partnership with regional and state organizations. Our allies include New Jersey Advocates for Aging Well, New Jersey Future, AARP New Jersey, all of which have taken the lead in building, or AARP has taken a lead in building a national network of age-friendly communities. We also work with Rutgers School of Social Work, whose research on innovation and aging practices and policies helps to inform our work. Here in Bergen County, the 6 age-friendly communities have begun to work together as a unit to address challenges that cut across community lines. Our communities have really benefited from this collaboration, especially in the early days of the pandemic, when project leaders came up with strategies to help connect residents to needed resources, from food assistance to vaccine appointments. As an alliance, we hope that our collective voices can help remove some of the barriers that too often lead to older adults being unable to find or access the services and programs they need to remain physically active and socially engaged. We count as recent successes the decision by both the state of New Jersey and Bergen County to join World Health Organization and AARP network of age-friendly states and communities. These initial steps will be followed by both the county and state developing new comprehensive plans incorporating age-friendly strategies. 2 members of our alliance have been appointed by the New Jersey Age-Friendly Advisory Board created by Governor Murphy, and our Bergen leaders participate on several county work groups and advisory boards. It's important that we view the aging of our population not as a negative. Population aging creates opportunities as well as challenges. Here in New Jersey, spending by residents over age 50 equals nearly half of the state's gross domestic product, and the over 50 demographic represents 1/3 of the state's workforce. Older adults need to be valued by communities. Older adults shop locally. They have strong civic ties. They bring a wealth of expertise and experience that communities should be capitalizing on by creating more ways for older adults to keep volunteering and participating in community life at later ages. It's time to stop overlooking the enormous opportunities that older adults bring to our communities. We can work together to make our communities a great place to grow up and grow old. And now I just want to talk about a couple of other age-friendly approaches. We have something called the village model. Villages are generally member-driven, nonprofit, community-based networks that provide independent living resources and referrals so that older adults who choose to age in place can continue living vibrant and healthy lives in their homes and communities, even as they age and need more support services. The principle is simple. Instead of leaving their homes for senior housing or assisted living, older adults in a community form a nonprofit membership organization run by a board of directors elected by village members, and they are supported by a combination of fees, grants, and fundraising. Villages offer their members a network of services that support aging in communities, such as transportation and home repairs delivered by both paid providers and volunteers, social, cultural, and educational programs, health and wellness activities, and member-to-member volunteer support, as well as vetted and discounted service providers for anything and everything its members want and need. A village can range from a few blocks in an urban or suburban neighborhood to a rural area with a 20-mile radius. The first village, Beacon Hill Village in Boston, began over a decade ago when 12 older adults joined forces to create a way for them to age at home and remain independent as long as possible while they enjoyed each other's company. There are now more than 190 villages nationwide, with more than 150 in development using blueprints created by these pioneers. So locally, there's something called North Jersey Villages. They have a website, and they are working to try to create more villages in this area. And then there's a larger sort of village-to-village network that, again, has a lot of information on how to start a village and what is happening in villages throughout the country. And then finally, some of you may have heard of NORCs, Naturally Occurring Retirement Communities. This is a type of senior housing arrangement that develops gradually over time. A single apartment building, a city neighborhood, or even several areas within the same community can constitute a naturally occurring retirement community. The common link is that the residents in these communities have chosen to age in place together, either delaying or foregoing a move to traditional senior housing altogether. They offer a network of support that enable residents to age in place safely for as long as they choose to stay. And like in villages, some of the community services that can be available through NORCs are home repairs, home health care, hospice services, social services, activities, home meal delivery, and basic transportation. This varies by location, of course, but the basic idea is that the naturally occurring retirement community will arrange for the necessary support services to help its residents stay at home safely for as long as they desire and are able. And I think that's about it for my remarks, but I'm happy to, EJ and I are both happy to answer any questions you might have. Yes.
Hold on. So I noticed there's a lot of problems with housing people who have low income and, they go to homeless shelters and stuff. And then, I see a complementarity between the needs of people, younger adults that might have time and they don't have a job, and the seniors who have a home, they might have 3 bedrooms. And I was wondering how much is being done to place people who could actually work part-time or a couple of hours a day to help meet the needs of the elderly, and then have a room and a use of a kitchen facility, and maybe develop a bond or a friendship. And I think it would solve a lot of problems for a lot of people, but the elderly and younger generation, or people who might have a little emotional issues and they're having problems to find housing for emotionally disturbed people. But a lot of those people are much more functional if they just had a good setting like that.
Right. So believe it or not, in 1983, I worked for an organization that started a home sharing program in New York City. And that program has done extremely well and continues to thrive. And older adults are matched with other older adults, but they're also matched with students who are trying to find affordable housing in New York City. There's even now a component that I'm not completely familiar with, but I know they have a contract with the Division of Disabilities, Division of Developmental Disabilities, and they're sometimes placing adults with a disability with an older adult. In New Jersey, I think it's a little bit of a harder sell. I think it makes tremendous sense. I think there are examples here in Teaneck of people sharing their home, either with other older adults, but also with, I know there's been like some students from Fairleigh Dickinson that have found housing by sharing with an older adult. The Women's Rights Information Center in Englewood has a home sharing program. I think they find it easier to find people who need housing than people who are willing to open up their home. I think there's a lot of skepticism on the part of homeowners around the idea of bringing someone into their home. But I think when you work with a program that does screening and matching and then offers ongoing support, it can be extremely beneficial. It combats loneliness and isolation. As you pointed out, you could have somebody younger who could help with snow shoveling or chores around the house. And it can be fun. So I think there's got to be a lot of education done. And I hope Women's Rights Information Center is doing that. But I think it's not for everyone, but I think home sharing is a fantastic solution to the housing crisis that we're facing. I understand that we're short about 300,000 units of affordable housing. And I think that's just for older adults. That doesn't even include families. Yes.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question that follows directly off of this issue, but I'm not sure you'll be able to answer it or not. So I know that in a lot of communities nationally where there's a housing shortage, one of the problems is that the zoning laws have been set up to prevent people from renting out apartments in their private home. For example, if you have a basement apartment or maybe a bedroom that has a private entrance. Now, do you know if in Bergen County that is allowed or not allowed? This is why I say I don't know if you know the answer to that. Because I could both provide income to people as well as a housing source.
Well, with home sharing, you can do that. You are allowed to take in someone into your home and share your home. Now, if you're creating a separate livable unit with its own kitchen, and then you get into, then it can get dicey. But there is a real push to allow accessory dwelling units. And there's been a lot in the media recently about these. They're fairly controversial, I think. And I have spent enough time in front of the zoning board to say, good luck if you want to build an ADU on your lot. But I think it's something that has to be considered. Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
I was told that if you're over 65, you can rent the rooms in your house.
And Mark was just saying, if you're over 65, he says you can rent. He's been told you can rent the rooms in your house. Yeah, did you want
Excuse
Yeah,
me?
I just
there's
wanted to
no-
add, within Bergen County, there's no county rule about it. It's home rule, so it's municipal by municipality. I know that ADUs are growing in other counties near us, in Essex County, in Passaic and Hudson, so there might be options for, I think in this room, there might not be everyone from Bergen County. There is a group down in Princeton, that is trying to help municipalities grow their interest in building ADUs and what that legislation might occur. And so it is a growing thing in New Jersey, but right now there is a lot of difficulty in educating our elected officials in what that might entail.
Yes, I just wanted to say that we should now take some, I see one hand raised on Zoom. So we should take a question from the Zoom audience.
Thank you, Ruth. And I'd like to remind our Zoom audience to please raise your hand electronically so that we can see it. If you're on a phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and *6 to mute. At this point, we have a question from Pam Berglund. Please unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth, I have a main issue here. I live in Passaic County, so Bergen County has all the wonderful programs to get around Bergen County. I am stuck with using Access Link, which is an affordable way to get around, but horrible transportation issues, not showing up, getting lost, not being available to leave when I need. So my question for you is, how do we get the county or people, who do I have to look for to make transportation better? Because I live in an independent living facility for seniors, and we're just stuck here. If our bus driver, the driver who's local is on vacation or is not available, we are literally stuck in our apartments.
Right. Thank you, Pam, for bringing that up. I think this is really a problem in New Jersey. And I grew up in New York, as I said, and I moved to New Jersey a few years ago. And it's really astounding to me how complex and difficult the New Jersey transportation system is. I have a younger brother who is disabled, and he was trying yesterday to get to a program that he goes to on Saturday. And in yesterday's frigid temperatures, he stood for 2 hours waiting for his bus to come, and it never came. And it's a very common occurrence for him to get stuck coming home from work, where the 4 o'clock bus doesn't come and he has to wait till the 5 o'clock bus. And when he asks like what happened, they'll just say, well, the driver must have been out sick. And I'm like, what? But I think, Pam, it's something that we go to all the transportation hearings in Bergen County. I'm sure Passaic County has them as well. We are continually advocating to the Division of Senior Services in Bergen County. Again, I'm sure Passaic County has a similar division, that this is a problem. And as EJ pointed out, you have home rule, and you have, these fairly decent little transportation services in communities, but they won't go. So if I live in Teaneck, I can get a bus, but it won't take me to my doctor in another town. So
Right.
I don't have an easy or hopeful solution to this problem. But I think, again, in my opinion, housing and transportation are really the domains of livability that are most challenging and also most important. And we need to figure this out. We need to work with New Jersey Transit, but also with local community services, and try to figure out a way to have them better integrated and more reliable for people. I don't know, EJ, did you have anything to add to that?
Not to the Passaic County specifically, I can speak on Bergen County, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you,
Really,
Pam.
that's my question. Who do I go to?
So I I think if, you know, as an ally should be the Passaic County Division of Senior Services or Division of Disabilities, because both are serving populations of people where there are many people who don't drive anymore or can't drive for one reason or another. I will say that, and you know, reach out to the governor's office. The governor has committed to making New Jersey an age-friendly state. So an age-friendly state has good transportation options for people. And again, it's not going to happen overnight, but there needs to be more efforts and focus and attention put to that. So I would, you know, call, email everyone you can think of that's in a position, you know, to inform policies.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you
A
so much.
couple more from Zoom.
We have several more hands, so we'll now call on Ed Gross. Please unmute yourself.
Thanks for this talk. Elizabeth, I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit more about how it's going in Teaneck in terms of what you've been able to accomplish in making it age-friendly and what the obstacles are? And along with any obstacles, is there something that our group could do to, or individuals in our group could do to support the efforts to make Teaneck more age-friendly?
Sure. So like many organizations or programs or communities, age-friendly certainly got hit with the pandemic, and we had a lot of different programs that were underway or in the planning stages and had to sort of be put on hold because of COVID. But despite COVID, and some of the projects, like I mentioned, EJ's videos on how to use technology, that was really inspired by COVID, because we knew that so many people were home and socially isolated and needed to know how to connect to different kinds of social activities that were available. I think some of our accomplishments in Teaneck, we did advocate and get our town manager to agree to hire a full-time social worker. That position had been vacant for a while, and we felt very strongly that Teaneck, with a population of, I think, around 40,000 people, needed to have a social worker. And so we were able to get that put into place. We have, let's see, help me, EJ, with some other things. We did, you know, again, we've done a lot of work around communication and advocacy, and trying to create different platforms for people to get information. We've held housing forums. We've held wellness fairs. We did this very comprehensive park survey, which we hope, and we're going to be meeting with our town manager next week to really talk about maybe getting some grant funding to actually start doing some work in the parks. We've done a lot of intergenerational programs. As I mentioned, we have a summer internship program, which is fantastic, where we give stipends to high school students to spend a month with us learning all about programs and resources for older adults, but importantly, career opportunities, because we're facing severe labor shortages, you know, in the field of aging and aging-related services. And so we already had a couple of students say that we had a student who decided to become a pharmacist, and we have a student who's interested in technology, and we opened his eyes to all the different ways that technology impacts older adults. And we also have trained a number of students at Teaneck High School to be tech tutors, to work one-on-one with, you know, I'm lucky I work with a lot of young people, and I have 2 adult children who, when I get my new smartphone, can explain to me how, you know, how things work on it. But, you know, for someone who doesn't have access to a young person like that, these tech tutors have been great. What else?
Yeah, and I think with what you were saying with our technology program, we are airing it on the public access channel, which is available for free on television, because television is a technology that most older adults and many people have grown accustomed to, even if they don't consider that a technology. And so with that is you know, what they can learn on TV is, you know, it's a class that they're kind of following. But
would you repeat all that?
Sure. for those on Zoom. I was just saying that we are doing the technology training, and it's being aired on the public access channel because technology or TV is a technology that many people have grown accustomed to, even if they don't consider it technology anymore, because it has just become commonplace in all of our households. But what you're learning there, it's passive learning. You're not able to kind of communicate with people one-on-one. And so that's where our technology tutors that we've trained through the Teaneck High School and with the Teaneck Library, that's where they come into play, because we set them up with any older adult who's interested in hearing what they had seen on TV and having someone guide them through that either on their own pace. So helping them through their devices, because not every device is the same. And the buttons move like every 3 months because bigger companies decide that, they want to just change things up a little, but it makes it more complicated for many users. And then with what Ed had asked about, what can, how can Age Friendly really be helped with your organization and your group? I think it would just be wonderful for us to really be in more open communication with each other. As Elizabeth mentioned, we had put a pause on a number of our meetings because of COVID, and we were unsure about, gathering in larger spaces now, but now that it's opening up, we're really open to having more advisory meetings with people, hearing what's out in the community. The last time we had done a big community survey was in 2020, so we're due for another one, and we'd love to hear your voices in creating what that might look like and how we can approach the next couple of years of our group.
And just a couple of other things. We did have we actually hosted a seminar on community planning and land use. So, addressing topics like accessory dwelling units and what's allowed and what's not allowed in communities. We had a with New Jersey Transit, but what's the group out of Rutgers? New Jersey TIP, Transportation Independence Program, and helps people to better understand their transportation options and how to navigate your way through public transportation. And we had a trip where we were teaching people how to use public transportation. I did not participate in it, and I wish I had, because more recently I was wanting to take the bus into New York City, and I didn't realize, again, I'm a New Yorker, now I live in Teaneck, I live right around the corner, but up until a few years ago I was a New Yorker, and when you stand at a bus stop, the bus stops. But here, I didn't realize you have to wave for the bus to stop. So I'm standing there and thinking, here's the bus, great, I'm going to be on time for my meeting. And then the bus went right by me. I was like, wait a second. And then someone said, oh, you have to wave. But again, and I think, I know that not everyone in this group is from Teaneck or even Bergen County, but I think the kinds of concerns that have been raised today and that we're continually hearing, are sort of universal, difficulty with transportation and getting around and affordable housing challenges. And so those are universal concerns. And so bringing those concerns to our attention, check out our website, follow us on social media. If you are interested in getting involved, there's lots of volunteer opportunities for Age Friendly Teaneck and other age friendly communities in the area.
Okay, we're now going to take a couple of people from the room.
Ruth, I just want to let you know, Joelle does have some information to share in case you'd like to. I mean, we want to make sure we have Joelle able to share her information.
Okay, thank you.
I was just wondering, this house sharing, is it only for exchange for service? Or it could be monetary, sharing the expenses of the house?
Yeah, it can be any number of things. So there are people that get together because they, one person has a house and the taxes and, housing related costs are high, and the other person can't find affordable housing, so they share. And it could be two older people and there's no chores involved. And they agree on, use of the kitchen and whatever. And but they pay a rent every month.
Yeah, but do you think it's varies from locality to municipality? What applies in Paramus may not apply in Ridgewood. Maybe they have their own regulations.
Right. I think as far as home sharing is concerned, and we're not talking about renting out a separate unit in your, it's typically, it's not like I create an apartment within my.
In a single family.
In a single family house.
And you have
I have a
enough
single
room.
family house and I am allowed to take in a roommate and have that roommate pay. Now, I'm not necessarily allowed to build that roommate a separate kitchen or,
No,
you
no.
know, but I don't think that there are any zoning, if there's any zoning regulations that prohibit someone from taking in a roommate.
I just wanted to add to that.
Thank you.
With Women's Rights Information Center in Englewood, we do have that.
Sorry, Zoom guys. Yeah, with Women's Rights Information Center in Englewood, they do help with the roommates in creating kind of that contract to make sure that, you know, the couples or the pairings who are taking in a roommate are able to really talk through those, and they check in after the first month, and they check in every 3 months, and it's, you know, so it keeps up with that on a statewide level. So not just in Bergen County, there is Home Sharing Inc. And they are trying to really expand their reach, and they do very similar things where they host roommate contracts, and they have those. And so though it's not municipal by municipality, it's usually house by house because there is no specific legislation on home sharing like that.
There's an organization in New York City, it's called the New York Foundation for Senior Citizens. And that's the organization that I mentioned earlier, that they operate a home sharing program in New York City. And there's lots of information on their website, but they have fantastic videos where they interview people who have been matched together, and they talk about, you know, just what a enriching experience it can be, and also financially. You know, if you have a large home and you want to stay there, or, you know, as I said, there's not a lot of, you know, you can have a house and think, well, I can't really afford this house, but like, where do you go? If you want to stay in this area, housing is expensive and there aren't enough options. So sometimes the best option is to take in a roommate who can help share your expenses. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think we'll take one more from the room and then go to Joelle, who will give us some information.
I've worked in government most of my life. And I realized that all of us think in terms of what exists. My mother lived in Miami Beach and was president of the Adlai Stevenson Democratic Club. And I remember having lunch with Mom, and this man comes up to her and he says, "Evelyn, are you going to hurt me?" And I looked at my mother and went, "What are you into?" But she dressed this guy down, and he went away with his tail tucked between his legs. He was the mayor of Miami Beach. And what Mom did was deliver the senior vote. And she would put, and you know, she was also commissioner on the status of women. They loaded up the buses and they went down and they voted, and they could vote somebody out. The real estate industry has a crippling effect on our morality. We dance around it. Your programs are absolutely wonderful. I'm the benefit of one of those programs. But the reality is you can't just stop at what doesn't, you know, say, well, I have to go along with the particular housing rules. They got to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the only change is to get into the bus and go down to the council meeting and say, next time you do this, or when you're elected, we'll find somebody else who is more supportive to what we need. We dance around the realities that are imposed on us, and sometimes those realities are purely exploitive, and sometimes they're a matter of ignorance or lack of understanding. You have a lot of power. I thought there was young people, and I wanted to pass a thing. We put things on what we want to do as an ethical society, or how we saw the world. And the thing that I wrote in my head was, young people have a lot of power and they can change what exists. So do we. So do we. And if you're not, you know, I understand you can't go public as being an advocate of changing legislation, but we can. You can talk to us about what you need and give us the ammunition, but we have the power if we only take it. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great point, and I actually should have included that in my remarks when we talk about older people and all that they contribute to communities, and they do as a group vote. And while I'm, I'm certainly not supposed to be a lobbyist, I can advocate, and I do go and testify before Senate committees. But I think that's another great way that people in the community can contribute to this project. It's a community project. It's not our project. And I know, housing is a very controversial issue in this community and in many communities. And when I tried to develop my building, which has 62 units of affordable housing, TNEC fought me long and hard. I had to, and imposed a condition on me that impacted Bogota. So I ended up having to sue TNEC once and sue Bogota and TNEC a second time. And it took 5 years from the time I started planning that building to get a shovel in the ground. And that's why there's a shortage of affordable housing. The processes to develop affordable housing, the funding, funding applications and so on, it's so complex, but really the biggest problem is that communities oppose it. And it's really disheartening and discouraging to me that communities make it so difficult to build affordable housing and to think of anybody without a safe place to live, but particularly a person who may be vulnerable and is aged. And I just think it's awful. But yes, that's a great way that we can all work together and that everyone can contribute by raising their voice and going to these different public hearings and speak, and calling your legislators and your representatives.
Okay, I think we're going to go to Joelle.
Okay, so we actually have information from Rachel Herman, who I think, Rachel, you might be on with Vito. Vito, I don't know if you want to open up your mic and share this information. If not, I can read what is in the chat about the New Jersey Transit. Okay. I'll read it. New Jersey Transit held a disability forum last month, and they pretty much dismissed anyone with access link concerns. So it's concerning that New Jersey Transit wants to limit this advisory board. And Vito noted that the next New Jersey Transit board meeting is Wednesday, February 8th, that's this week at 5:30 p.m. And if you want to make comments, click on the link, and there's a link in the chat here, njtransit.com/about/board-of-directors. So that's here.
Hi, I just jumped on.
Okay, hi, Rachel.
Hi, sorry. So in addition to that, if there is on the New Jersey Transit website a link that says accessibility, and they held an accessibility forum on December 15th. And there was a lot of complaints about access link, and they kind of blew it off. So it's recommended that you write in and make a complaint anytime there's an issue, or call in, but writing is really better because you can document it. These are the kind of things that the ScatterTAC, the Senior Disabled Advisory Committee that Vito was speaking of, is trying to maintain access to advocate for. We haven't heard any updates. They're in negotiation with the board of directors, and they're hoping to have a resolution before this board meeting, but I haven't heard any updates yet. So I do encourage people to leave feedback, even if they do get a resolution and they don't lose that access, because people use access link all the time, and they don't seem to think that they need to really improve the service based on the way that they were addressing the issues in the accessibility forum. That's all I have.
Thank you, Rachel.
And we have time for one more in the room back here.
I was just curious about two things. One, why the community resists a breakthrough for older homes? I mean, am I heard you wrong when you were saying you get assistance from the community when you want to build this kind of homes for old people?
I'm sorry, I don't know that I completely, why is there resistance?
Yes.
Well, I think there's a few reasons. When we built our building which opened in 2016, we were building it on an acre and a half of vacant land. It had never been developed, but it was in a community of mostly single-family homes, although on the one side is Pagoda, we're in Teaneck, but on the other side of the building is Pagoda, and there's a gas station and a deli. But I think the homeowners were concerned about what it would mean to their property values, what kinds of people would live in the building. I think there was the impression that there was going to be constant truck deliveries and it was going to increase traffic, and there's always concerns about parking. And in reality, now that the building is there, I think the community is really happy with it. I think it's upgraded the community. There's extensive studies on the impact of affordable housing on communities. And it's been demonstrated time and time again that it doesn't negatively impact property values. And that we're a good neighbor and we don't generate a lot of traffic. Now we're just started constructing 40 units of housing at 1425 Teaneck Road, which is the old DPW site. And there's a lot of controversy about that project because we are not able, because the building is being funded with federal funds, we're not allowed to give preference to Teaneck residents. One of the things that we feel strongly about is that while fair housing rules are really important and are in place for very good reasons, there's such a shortage of housing, and we have to do something to incent communities to support and develop affordable housing, so that if a community is going to put resources into a development, maybe they could give preference for some percentage of the units to their local residents, especially in a community like Teaneck, which is diverse. And it's not like we're trying to keep a certain population out. It's just that we want our residents to be able to age in place in the community that they have ties to. So while we agree and appreciate that, right now it's not possible because the federal, so we have talked with our federal representatives and state representatives, and we've talked with the AARP, and it's a little bit of a dicey, sensitive issue because there are lots of fair housing advocates that strongly oppose any kind of community preference. But that's another reason that communities feel, well, if we support this building, then it should only be for our residents. So there's lots of reasons. It's complex. People are sometimes less resistant to affordable senior housing than affordable family housing. But when I went before the Teaneck zoning board way back in like 2000, maybe 9 or 10, I actually had people from the zoning board say things to me like, well, who is going to be in the building? What if people from Camden rent a bus and try to come into the building? So, blatantly racist, remarks from appointed, Board of Adjustment members or.
Now, my other question was, I have a disability. When I go to New York, I got no problem getting anywhere on my wheelchair. They got cars accessible, any Uber cars for me. My question is how I kind of push an organization like that to get that kind of service over here.
Right, so that is something that we're doing here. All the age-friendly communities, it's very slow. It doesn't happen overnight, but we are talking about complete streets, about making curb cuts and making intersections and pedestrian crossings safe for people. Again, people in wheelchairs, people who are older and walk slowly, people who are pushing a baby carriage for bicyclists. I walk my dog around Teaneck and, we'll be walking and all of a sudden there's no more sidewalk. And a lot of these communities were built a long time ago and they were not built with age-friendly friendliness in mind, nor were they, nor were the considerations of people with disabilities considered. So I think it's just, again, as was said in the earlier comment, going to or participating in Zoom meetings with TNEC or whatever your community is, town council meetings. There's actually, I don't know about right now, but there's been times where there's been an enormous amount of federal and state funding for that, for improvements and making communities more pedestrian friendly and accessible. So it's just pushing our elected officials to take advantage of those resources. We've had a number of crossings improved in TNEC. We've had, lights timed differently so that there's more time to cross. I know there's been a lot more curb cuts put in, but it's a long way to go. And I agree, New York City is actually a very age-friendly place because it's walkable and it's accessible, and you can get to, there's good transportation, but it's harder in these suburban communities.
Well, I'd like to thank Elizabeth Davis, and I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
EJ Vizzy.
EJ, right? Oh, okay.